When Anne Weiszmann opened up a booklet of stamps she had bought for her mother, she never expected to see her mother's picture on the stamp, but that's exactly what happened. Now, you may have heard Judith Weiszmann's story on CBC on Friday. Her picture was on a Canada Post stamp featuring Raoul Wallenberg, Canada's first honorary citizen. Now, Wallenberg was a Swedish architect and diplomat who helped save the lives of hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews during the Second World War, including Judith. He got them Shutz-Passes, a sort of visa that the German authorities accepted. Anne Weiszmann joins us now. Hi, Anne.
Hi, good morning.
So let's start with telling us, why did you buy the stamps for your mum?
Well, over the years I've gone to every movie that has ever been produced about Wallenberg. I've read every book that I can put my hands on. I attribute my mother's life, and therefore my life, to Wallenberg's heroic efforts. So there was a movie put on by the Holocaust Center, the Neuberger in Toronto, where I live, and I went with my husband to see the movie. And at the conclusion of the movie, the person who was introducing the movie mentioned that Canada Post would be issuing a stamp the very next day in honor of Wallenberg. So, of course, that, Thursday last week, I went out and purchased a stamp, or a booklet of stamps. But I didn't look at them right away. I just put them in my purse.
So what happened when you did look at them?
Well, I was at work the next day, and I was just emptying my purse to start the day, and then I saw the brown envelope with the stamps, and I took them out, and I opened the first booklet, and on the outside cover, I saw the picture of my mother, and I thought, wow, this really looks, this person looks a lot like my mother.
Because we should jump in here, because it was a picture of her when she was 14 years old.
That's right. And
okay.
I had seen the Shutz-Pass, of course, many, many times. I mean, I've held the original. It's in my mother's bank safe in Winnipeg. And so I had looked at the picture, and I thought, wow, this girl really looks a lot like my mother. I better put my glasses on. So I took my glasses out of my purse and put them on and let out a shriek, because beside my mother's picture on the front cover of the stamp is her name and birth date. And then I knew definitively that it was her. And I was like, oh my God, it's my mother. My mother's on a stamp with Raoul Wallenberg.
So did you call your mom right away?
No, I didn't, because my mother was out of town in a different time zone, and I didn't want to wake her up. And so I just thought, okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna wait a little bit, and then, when it's a more reasonable time, I'll give her a call. So I only could wait about an hour because I was so excited, and I woke her up and I said, "Guess what, Mom? You're on the stamp with Raoul Wallenberg." And she had just woken up, to the ring of the phone, and she said, what? And I said, you're on the stamp with Wallenberg. Canada Post issued a stamp, and I purchased it, and I'm holding the stamp in my hand, and you're on the stamp. And she said, oh, my God, what an honor. She said, can you send me, a scan of it? Can I see it right away? I said, sure, let me just go over to the scanner, and I'll send it off to you. So, yeah.
And you said at the beginning of the interview, he saved your mother's life. So when you saw her picture on this stamp, what did you think?
Well, I've grown up, my parents always spoke very freely about the Holocaust. So I've grown up knowing a lot of what happened and how their lives were saved. And, I just, all I could think about is what an incredible honor it would be for my mother to have been chosen for this, for her Shutz-Pass to be on the stamp. It's been a sort of an undercurrent in our home that, he was just an incredible man who, in the face of such evil and hatred, that he had the backbone and the courage to stand up to that and to do, to issue the Shutz-Passes and put his life at risk, really. And he had no former connection to the Jewish community in Hungary. He was a Swede who was a businessman previous to his incarnation as a diplomat who came to Hungary to save Jews. So it's an incredible honor for her.
Now, in the course of trying to figure out how they got a hold of your mother's Shutz-Pass picture, you think it may have been his daughter that somehow was involved in this. So tell me about that.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Wallenberg's daughter.
Oh, sorry.
It was Wallenberg's
half-sister. Sorry, his half-sister. Yep, sorry.
So about 10 years ago, a statue in honor of Raoul Wallenberg was unveiled at Earl Bales Park in Toronto. It's very close to where I live. And my parents flew in from Winnipeg, and we all went to the unveiling of the statue. And they brought with them color photocopies of their Shutz-Passes, because both my parents were Wallenberg, what's referred to as Wallenberg Jews, so people that survived because of Wallenberg. And they gave Nina Wallenberg, Raoul's half-sister, copies of their Shutz-Passes. And she was very grateful, and she spoke, reasonable English and was able to, have a conversation with my parents and said that she did not have a Shutz-Pass. She didn't have a copy of one. And she was very grateful because, this was kind of a connection to her brother. Mm-hmm. And we think that that's where the image company that ultimately supplied the image to Canada Post got the Shutz-Pass.
Now, something else you discovered while doing this was that your mother's picture is also on another stamp.
Yes. So after all the, the news of this, my brother went on the internet to try and figure out, how they got the image or where else the image might have been used, and he discovered that. He's a bit of a computer geek. I would have never found it, but he did, and he found that Sweden also used my mother's Shutz-Pass in their stamp that they made about Wallenberg.
And does she have a copy of that stamp?
We don't have a copy yet.
But you're going to get one.
My brother is trying to get a copy of it, yeah.
No, and I know since your mother's story aired on CBC on Friday, she has become quite a celebrity, I gather, with a lot of media and whatnot. How's she handling everything?
Well, my mom is a very sort of calm, level-headed, she was a structural engineer in her career. And she's a very sort of calm, level-headed, no fuss, no muss kind of lady. So she's handled it all very, calmly. It's quite incredible. I don't think I would have been so calm if it was me.
What has she done with that first booklet of stamps you bought her?
Well, we actually just spoke about it before you called. We're going to make an album, and an album for her, and of course an album for my children. My children are quite young, 9 and 17, and this is something that, I think for them, as they grow up, that, they'll be able to explain it to their children, what their grandmother went through.
And when your mom spoke with us on Friday, she said she was just so honored for this to have happened to her, right?
Yeah, she's thrilled.
Yeah.
She's absolutely thrilled. Really, I mean, out of all the righteous Gentiles that saved Jews during the Holocaust, as far as we know, nobody else saved 100,000 Jews. And he was responsible for saving 100,000 Jews through his efforts, not just of the Shutz-Passes, but he apparently threatened the SS officer who was in charge of the ghetto because they were going to detonate bombs in over the ghetto and kill all the Jews that they had herded into the ghetto. And Wallenberg threatened the SS officer and said that if they did that, then he would make sure through diplomatic channels that he was brought before a war crimes tribunal at the conclusion of the war. And the order, which had to do this, had come directly from Hitler, and apparently this SS officer rescinded the order and said he was not going to allow for that to happen, and in fact the ghetto was never bombed. And there was, tens of thousands of Jews there in houses. So Wallenberg really is responsible not just for the saving of lives of those that held the Shutz-Passes, but also those that were in the ghetto. So, it's an incredible honor to be, on a document, immortalized with him. She was a 14-year-old little girl.
So she never met him, though, eh?
She did meet him.
Oh, she did meet him.
Did meet him, and the connections go beyond just the stamp. Her father, who was an import-export businessman, when he was no longer able to work in his business because Jews were no longer allowed to work in their businesses, went to work with Wallenberg at the Swedish legation. My grandfather spoke 7 languages and was able to converse with people from many countries who had come to Hungary seeking refuge. At that point in history, in 1944, Hungary was the last country to be officially invaded by the Germans. And many Jews from surrounding countries that had already been invaded came to Hungary to seek refuge. and they would come to the Swedish, when they heard that they could get papers, they came to the Swedish legation looking for the papers, but not everybody spoke all those languages. My grandfather was able to do that. And
that's how she managed to meet him.
And one day, my mother was bringing something for my grandfather. I think she said it was food that she was bringing across the street, because the safe house that they were in was very close to the legation. And she brought the food in, and my grandfather introduced her to Wallenberg as his little daughter.
What an amazing
she
story.
Did meet him. Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it there today, Anne. Congratulations, and just say hi to your mom for us again. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that is Anne Weiszmann speaking to us from holiday in Hawaii. And you can see the stamp. We're going to post it onto our Facebook page, facebook.com/Radio Noon.